Get my 6. What's up, everybody? There's some deer, like I can almost reach out and touch them. I'm not going to turn the camera to show you because I think they might come try to smell my coffee, but I just got like a minute of them here. Check this out real quick, then we're going to get to the video. Look at that cute baby deer. I came up here to make my video. Trying not to spill my coffee in my right hand so I can zoom. Look, I sit on this stump and set the tripod up here. Tell my stories. And there's the baby deer. There's the baby, the mom. I mean, they're like 15 feet away. There's another one down there. Hi there, deer. Can I sit over here and tell a story? Can I sit over here and talk about aliens and UFOs and ghosts and stuff like that? Can I tell you about the bathroom I was in today in a cafe, the bathroom of which is nicer than my house? Look, there's a deer. Where'd she go? There she is. She's very close too. Hey there, deer. Wow, these are pretty. Hi. I mean, gosh, why don't they just get a little closer? Here, you want some coffee? Huh? They're almost close enough to drink my coffee. Are you the ones that woke me up yesterday in my hammock? Well, they don't seem to be leaving, so I'm gonna sit down here and tell a story about UFOs and spaceships and combat zones and ghosts and all kinds of stuff. And that bathroom with the freaking fireplace in it. Isn't that something? They're like right there. Well, they're starting to move away. My tripod's broken, but don't send me a new one because I just ordered one on Amazon. It'll be here tomorrow, free delivery. So I can't turn, but they're like right there. But yeah, I ate in a cafe today that had a fireplace in a bathroom. Like, the bathroom is nicer than my house. I've just never seen this before. It's on the downtown mall in Charlottesville. Check this out. Okay, this bathroom is nicer than my house. Look at this. This is a cafe on the downtown mall in Charlottesville, Virginia called the Bradbury. Easy for me to remember, named after Ray Bradbury. Well, it's not named after Ray Bradbury, same name. Check it out. Freaking fireplace in the restroom. Private rooms. Look at this. I just had fish and chips here for 15 bucks, and there's a fireplace in the restroom. How many fish and chips you gotta sell to afford that, brah? All right. So as you can tell, I'm eating up the minutes here with video of deer, video footage of these deer, and bathrooms with fireplaces in them. Might make you think I don't have anything to talk about today, but I actually do. Got a couple things to talk about. It's like UFOs and combat zones, really. We'll talk about that. And then what it's like to be the crazy one when everyone else is sane. All right, give you a little spoiler alert on that. You ever heard it said that in the land of the blind, the man with one eye is king, and the man with two eyes is absolutely insane? That's what it's like being the one that's crazy when everybody else isn't. Let me get to it. And listen, my heart goes out to the sane people. I sympathize for them. And I empathize because once upon a time that was me. I prefer insanity. Listen, there's just different degrees of crazy. I was talking with a neighbor of mine out here. I actually have neighbors. I like most of them, like almost all of them. Just a couple were assholes, a hay collector, and then a sociopath who's married to a woman who has BPD. They're lunatics. But everybody else are great, and I actually talk to them regularly. But we were talking about how I had this theory that people in the country are actually crazier than the people in the cities because, and I've mentioned this in several of my writings, people in the cities have like careers, jobs, coffee shops they can go to. They have like a life. Whereas a lot of times in the country, you get the busybody types who are born onto land that's been paid for generations, and they don't necessarily have to work if they don't want to, and a lot of times they don't. So they have all this time, and a lot of these folks will spend their time involving themselves in the lives of others. Busybodies. And my neighbor that I was talking to lived in Dallas. not long ago. And he said, he goes, they're all nuts. It's just, they're different kinds of crazy. And I thought, you know what? That's it. He's got it figured out more so than me. Everybody's nuts. We're all just different kinds of crazy. So don't think I'm living in a glass house throwing stones. Trust me, I know I'm nuts. I just prefer my kind of crazy, and there's a few of you here that do as well. That's why you come here. These deer have not left. They obviously prefer my kind of crazy too. I'm going to see if I, without messing up my broken tripod system I got going on here. Look at this. See if they don't run from it. Are they there? Yeah, they're like, is that a deer? Or is that a Bigfoot Sasquatch? I can't tell. Oh, she's right here. Here's the mom. There's a baby right there. I can't zoom from this angle. My goodness. I mean, she's like 10 yards at most. I mean, if I could run a football from here to there, I'd get a first down. That's about 10 yards at the most. And she's like listening. She wants to hear about the aliens. You probably do too. So I'm going to tell you about the aliens and we'll talk more about crazy, okay? So, there's a story that I write about in, there towards the end of Isle of Capri. A lot of you have read that. And by the way, did you see the post on the community page? We finally put together the first volume of all those emails, all those stories, plus some that were never read on the channel. True Hauntings, Volume 1. Real stories of personal experiences with paranormal, supernatural, cryptids, UFOs, and aliens is now available on Amazon. The link is in the description box below, of course. But we're already compiling Volume 2. And guys, when I say volume, what I mean is this is more than 40,000 words. This is full-length novel compilation of your stories, not mine, that were sent in to the email. If you got one, send it in, crazylake@mail.com. They're being preserved now in book form so that, 2 or 3 years from now, when this social media platform determines it's something I said somewhere around this time frame is no longer socially acceptable, because that's the kind of crazy that Western society has gone towards. Something that is perfectly acceptable today can get you locked up underneath the social justice warriors jailhouse next week and you will be canceled. So in the event that happens, these stories are preserved now in book form on Amazon. Go check it out, get you a copy, because they're your stories, not mine. Erie and myself just spent a lot of time editing and putting them together. But there was a story in Isle of Capri. I mentioned, and I thought of the new Volume 1 because I mentioned in that for years been interested in this topic, done a lot of research, written a lot of fiction in this regard, a lot of nonfiction disguised as fiction, because if you were to come out and say, this happened, fill in the blank, whatever crazy thing this is, they're still there. Yeah, they lock you away in a lunatic asylum, right? Again. Been to those places. Geez, the food really does suck. But I saw a thing on the news today. I was so bored. I actually read the article, a news article. It was about how in Ukraine, they've been witnessing and recording a lot of UFO activity. And a lot of people are keeping their eyes on this. Some of it can be accounted for and some of it can't. Some of it is known military aircraft. Some of it is known missiles. But then there's some that is not known. Some of this stuff is flying at twice the speed of intercontinental ballistic missiles. Some of this stuff is flying at the speed of aircraft, which these countries are not supposed to have in their arsenals. And I thought, oh man, I bet people are going nuts with this in the comment section. So just for craps and giggles, I went there. I don't comment on social media. I mean, I rarely do it here on this channel. Erie does it some. I don't. I just don't. I'd just rather be out here in the woods talking to the deer, because they're my kind of crazy, man. I'd rather talk to most deer than most people. Huh. Yeah. So, but yeah, people were leaving comments that I don't think are too crazy about how alien societies, UFOs and whatnot have been observing us for many years, and at times of war, times of conflict, they really come and observe because they really want to stay up to date knowledge-wise. They want to be knowledgeable about what our military capabilities are, our weaponry capabilities. And there were people in the comment section saying that, the aliens have been doing this since the days of the Egyptians. Back thousands of years before man took flight, there were observed unidentified flying objects in the skies, especially over combat zones. And I think it's common knowledge that these sorts of experiences increase during times of conflict over combat zones. Now, doesn't take a rocket scientist, no pun intended, to know that, of course, you're going to see a lot of this stuff more frequently over combat zones in times of conflict because that's some of the weaponry we use. But how would you explain it back during the days of the Egyptians? And how can you account for the fact that some of this stuff is traveling twice as fast as it should be right now with the current conflict? Well, that answer, the second one, is pretty simple. We, the U.S. and China and everybody else, probably has stuff over there that nobody knows about. But it reminded me of a story, and this is a true story that I wrote and disguised as fiction there towards the end of Isle of Capri, when the main character, Pete Richards, is down and out in the Philippines, and he's trying to find this girl that had been abducted from what he was led to believe was Abu Sayyaf terrorists, but was actually Capri. And this is where we start to cross over into the other discussion I wanted to have with you about my kind of crazy. Listen, and no, this isn't, you get these people who suffer from veteran envy, people that never served, wish they had, maybe regret they hadn't, or maybe people that never deployed and kind of feel inferior in the presence of those of us who did when they're around us. They'll often accuse combat veterans as, all you guys ever talk about is I did this and I did that. No. And just because we mention it, listen, we have the right to mention it. It's part of our past. It's part of our lives. I was a stockbroker for 8 years. Every now and then I talk about finance. I talk about that stuff. Why wouldn't I every now and then just mention something from my military days? That deer is not moved. She's just standing there listening to all of it. So anyway, there was this thing that happened once in Iraq, and I put this in the story in Isle of Capri when the main character, Pete Richards, is talking about how he kind of doesn't listen. When you're raised up, you're put through the public education system, and you're taught that this is how the world is and this is how things are, and then you go outside of the bubble or the safety net of civilized society, and you go to a combat zone, you go off to war, and then after that, to add to it, you live in a developing nation, a third world country, in a completely different culture that is different than anything you've ever known. You quickly find yourself unlearning everything that you were taught and everything you learned, and then kind of relearning reality. Because if you don't, I think insanity is caused when you accept the fact that everything you think you know just ain't so. And you no longer even act as if you believe it is. That's when you become the man in the land of the blind who finally opened an eye, then open the other. You're batshit crazy because you're no longer, I dealt with the crazy woman today. Modern pop culture might want me to call her a Karen, but she's not a Karen. Was she Caucasian? Yeah. She's about my age, middle age. Is she privileged? I don't know. I don't know anything about her. But I'm going to get to it. I'm going to get to it because she is one of many in the same boat. So here's what happened in Iraq that I put at the end of the Isle of Capri. And if you're new to the channel, you're probably like, why does this guy keep going back and forth from here to here? It's like he tells a third of this story and a third of this one and a third of this one and a third of this one. Then he goes back here and tells the second third, then the second third and the second third. Why does he do that? Because that's my gift, brah. That's how you tell a story. You don't start at the beginning and end up at the end after having gone through the middle. You start in the middle. And then you tell this second fifth of it, and then the third fifth, and it just makes it flow better, brah. So we were in Iraq, and we had made it out of the city. We were doing convoy security, and I can talk about these things now because we're not there now, and I wouldn't talk about these things at all for many years because I didn't want to put somebody's life in danger. It's called OPSEC, Operational Security. So I was a machine gunner for a convoy security team, and what we did was we ran the main supply line in the northern part of the country. We would escort 100 empty tractor trailers every night from Mosul, well, every other night from Mosul up to the border of Turkey, Iran, Syria. The autonomous region known as Kurdistan was controlled by the Kurds, half of which were Christians. The other half were very moderate Muslims. They were followers of Islam, but they wouldn't kill you if you didn't follow Islam. They accepted you. They tolerated you. They let you be a Christian or a Jew or whatever. Left them alone, they'd leave you alone. It was a wonderful thing. Beautiful people. Gosh, I love the people there in Kurdistan. We were right on the Euphrates River, and we could look across the Euphrates into Turkey. We could see the Himalayan mountains, the Himalayas, covered with snow, even though we were down there in Iraq, 130 degrees, you know, during the day when we left the country. And look up there, see the snow. It's kind of like being out in the Pacific Northwest or out in the Rockies here, except hotter. And we could actually see the location where Noah's Ark was allegedly discovered just shortly before I was over there. It was really neat. So once we got out of the city of Mosul and out of the suburbs of Mosul and we crossed into Kurdistan, that's what we called our safe zone, our safety zone. There, you know, when you went past the checkpoints, when you saw soldiers with the AK-47s, they were the Kurds. They weren't Al-Qaeda in Iraq, I was part of General Petraeus' surge. We pushed them up into Syria, where they put down their weapons because Obama had been elected. He announced that he was going to pull us out as soon as he got in office, which he did. So they went to Syria, put down their weapons. So we're going to wait for you guys to be pulled out, and then we're going to go back and keep the killing and the carnage and things we were doing, which they did. But then the Obama administration called them ISIS, so that the folks back here who were walking around like this would believe it was a different terrorist network, which they did. But for those of us who are insane, it was the same people. So anyway, we were in this safe zone one night. We're rolling, and we would get lax. We would get lax. We understood we were in an occupation at this point. So we were rolling through there one night, talking about all the things we're going to do when we got home from war. Mind you, this was 2008, 2009. Me and my gun truck buddies, we came up with this idea on how we're going to get rich. Listen to this idea. Okay, 2008, remember, 2008, 2009. We knew how we were going to get rich. So what we were going to do when we got home was we're going to start a company where you could call us or you could email us to our website and say, okay, I want you to go to the grocery store and buy me this, and this. And then you'd send us some money. We'd go to the grocery store, or we would, you know, of course, maybe take out business loans or use credit cards or whatever, buy it. And then when we we would go to the grocery store and buy these things for you and bring them to your house. And then one of the guys in the truck said, oh, that's kind of complicated, but let's do it to where like we would go get their restaurant orders. I'm like, what? Yeah, like let's say somebody wanted a pizza from Domino's or they wanted some subs from Jersey Mike's or whatever. We would go do that. And then when we bring them their food, they'd pay us. It's like, yeah, let's do this. Thought about doing that. And then we said, there towards the end of the deployment, we're like, nah, that'll never work. And now I'm looking at Grubhub and Whole Foods food delivery, and I'm like, that was my idea. Whatever. So we're talking about this kind of stuff, going through the place where we're not supposed to be in too much danger. And all of a sudden, we take fire. We look out, we hear gunfire, we're looking out the truck, and we see tracer rounds coming at us, right? So we're yelling, contact left, 50 meters, whatever, the way you're supposed to do it. So everybody in the truck knows what's going on. We get on our guns. I'm the gunner. I'm on the gun. Everybody's ready. But here's the strangest thing. So these tracer rounds are coming right at us. And about, where'd that deer go? You might have seen them. They're gone now. You might have seen them walking around up here. 10 yards away at most, they go straight down to the ground. It's like nothing hit our truck. It's almost like our truck had a force field, okay? The truck didn't have a force field, not that we knew of. It had the jamming system, so if somebody wanted to blow up an IED, you know, we would jam their signal so it wouldn't explode until after we got past the IED, and then it would explode. At least that's how it was supposed to work. And so we reported this, of course. Our gun truck commander reported it up to the convoy commander. So he sent 2 security trucks back to pull security on our flanks. Well, they were pissed because they never saw, you know, this contact that we claimed that we saw. And so later when we got to where we were going up there in Kurdistan, they checked our truck. Wasn't a bullet mark on it. We'd never gotten hit. It was an up-armored vehicle. But you still would have been able to tell where something banged off the truck. There was no trace of any of this. So this was towards the end of the deployment. We were all heavily medicated by this point. We were on something called trazodone, which is like a horse tranquilizer. We would take it because we had to sleep. Because during the day when we're on the base back down to Mosul every other day, because we'd spend the night up there in Kurdistan, we slept during the day. Then the next night we would take 100 fully loaded with supplies, tractor trailers from there with the border with Turkey down to Mosul, drop them off. Then the next night, take empty trucks and full trucks. Did this for like a year. And when we're in Mosul, though, trying to sleep during the day, we get 3 or 4 hours of sleep. They were mortaring us, you know, mortars coming in, all these explosions, big old giant SV bid, suicide vehicle borne, IEDs going off at the gate, trying to bomb their way through the gate. It was hard to sleep. So pretty much we had to be heavily drugged to sleep. So our leadership felt maybe we were hallucinating from the meds or whatever. I don't know. A bunch of us got sent to anger management. All that did was piss us off. Because then instead of sleeping during the day, we had to go to these stupid anger management classes. So, but we had to go for a week. And I remember the last day that we were there, this chaplain comes in. He just wanted to talk to us, and he's talking about God and Jesus and all this stuff. And he's telling us this story about this one convoy. It wasn't ours. It was from a previous deployment. Said they were going through the desert. They were on convoy, and he said he was with them, and they started taking fire. They started receiving fire. And so he immediately started praying to Jesus, and he looked out and he noticed that the rounds were coming in straight for him and then dropping about 10 yards in front of the truck, dropping straight down. And he attributed it to the answer to prayer. So me and my battle buddies from my gun truck are just looking at each other. We never said a thing to him because we just never brought it up. Listen, the less you say, the better off you are when you're in the military and in life. The less you say, the less you have to defend. It's a pretty good expression I've heard, and it seems to be true. So anyway, I wrote about that in the book, and I thought about that in Isle of Capri, and it was part of where the main character is talking to his lady friend about. The conversation is in regard to, going back to my kind of crazy, when that point in life comes where you realize that so many of the things that you think you know just ain't so. Now, when you get to that point, you can do one of two things. You can continue to believe, or at least act as if you believe, that these things you think you know are so. Or you can open your eyes. But I got to warn you, when you open your eyes, they will call you crazy. You will be labeled as insane. And if you speak the truth in regard to those who are still continuing to play the part, they will get near hostile in their labeling of your insanity, because they don't want to hear what they think they know as true, because everything within their human structure is saying this guy's right or this girl's right. I was close to opening my eyes at one point, but I just couldn't stand what I saw out there, so it's better to keep them closed and act like the things I think I know are so, because they'll call me crazy just like him or her. And so what I'm going to do is make sure to get like hostile in regard to how crazy they are. So let me tell you, these Karens. Listen, folks, we need to stop being so hard on each other. These people are not privileged. Everyone has a story. Everyone's got something they're going through. Everybody's got something they've gone through, and we don't know what that is. And just because somebody's having a bad day, and she's 50-ish, and she's white, and she's got nice clothes, to say she's a privileged white woman and call her a Karen, that's wrong. That's wrong. When this thing first came out, I was kind of like, wow, this is really neat. Because when has American culture, pop culture, ever considered it to be okay to be kind of hostile towards any female? Well, not. It's not. And I'm a post-middle-aged white man of conservative tendencies. Now, mind what I'm saying. I'm not conservative. Trust me. A lot of those folks that are scare the living hell out of me. But I am a little right of center, just by nature, I think by upbringing, by personal beliefs. And I don't hate myself enough to go the other way. Bad things have happened throughout history around the world, and I don't think it's my fault. I mean, I didn't ask to be born my gender, my race, my nationality any more than anybody else. So I'm just not going to flog myself to get credit in certain circles. Listen, Tuesdays with Maury. I quoted this book a couple weeks ago, and I can't remember the author's name. And somebody's in the comment section pointed it out. They actually said they were from the hometown of the guy. Maury says in there, as he's dying, he was a college professor. Like, look, it's important that we understand our culture, but any parts of it that we don't agree with, it's perfectly acceptable to reject it. And so many people have so much stuff going on. They have spread themselves so thin. They're just at a breaking point. They're ready to snap. So all it takes is that one little incident on the road, for example. My wife dearly, I'm still working on teaching her to drive. She's got her learner's permit, and we go out practice driving, and we've got the magnet that goes on the back of the truck that says student driver, be patient. And I let her drive today, and she drove from one small town to another. And shortly after she pulled out onto the main road, the speed limit was it was 35, and it went up to 45. She comes out, some 20-year-old guy in a little hybrid electric car, because he cares about the world and everything, and he had his little $5,000 dog in the back. It's Charlottesville. Comes flying up as soon as we come out on the road, and he's just laying on the horn. Oh, like this. I said, honey, ignore him. Just come up to speed. And she doesn't care. She doesn't care. So she's being brought up to speed. Well, we finally get to where there's a straightaway. It's not a passing zone. But he passes us anyway, and he's flipping us off. And I'm like, just ignore him. That guy has got something he's going through. Or that guy's got something he's gone through. He's a Generation Z. He's 20 years old, driving his little hybrid. I believe a big part, there's something going on with young men in that generation, and it's that they have been very much marginalized. They have been brought up, they have been told while they've been brought up that they are not important anymore, and that masculinity is not important. As a matter of fact, masculinity is an unfair advantage over females, and they need to tone it down. And so you've got a lot of young men in that generation who just feel as if they don't matter. And I think they're angry about it. And I think that guy took part of his anger out on the road. I believe that's what that was. He's probably one of the nicest guys you'd ever meet if you talk to him. But I think a lot of these young men are filled with an inner rage because they've simply been marginalized. And I saw an article about this the other day in the media, and I thought, wow, they're finally addressing it. What's the answer? And I clicked on it and I started reading it, and the answer, according to this journalist who wrote the article, was that they needed to accept it and they needed to continue to allow females to let the light shine on them while they continue to dim their lights, and because it's now their turn, etc., etc. Folks, it's okay to open your eyes. When you live in a society that's as crazy as ours, it's okay to be considered insane because you reject the majority of it, or at least parts of it that are just batshit nuts. So, the woman I was dealing with, and it's just been a couple for the last couple of days. It was in supposed to be a professional environment. It had to do with forms, and I'm not going to say the environment because a lot of people would take that and run off with their political views with that. But it's not about that. And she was going on and on about all this stuff, her 4 kids and what she had going on and how many hours she was working and blah, 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 and all these things. And she wanted me to view the situation we were dealing with as more important than I felt it is. You know how they say don't sweat the small stuff and it's all small stuff? That's true. When you've had people trying to kill you in combat zones, in non-combat zones, but in third world countries where you have no rights because you're not a citizen, where you've had for years people attempting to kidnap your child for ransom because they believe that since you are a white American, you're filthy rich and you've got $1 million of their local currency, whatever it is, there it happened to be pesos, just laying around in your sock drawer you can pull out at any time to get your kid back. You realize how unimportant so many of the things that we're supposed to view as important over here are. And I'm sorry, I just have a hard time getting excited to the degree to where I'm turning myself inside out over paperwork and forms. And I don't. I get them signed and I turn them in, and I'm not going to act like, so whatever. But I'm not going to call that woman a Karen. And at first, these words came out of my mouth. I told my wife, I said, listen, people who do what she do are narcissists with martyr complexes. Okay, it was the public school. I was dealing with somebody associated with the public school system there. But you know what? After I calmed down, I said, you know what, honey, I'm wrong. That woman's not a narcissist with a martyr syndrome. What she does is important. These forms are important. This person has so much stuff going on in their lives, or in their life. They're spread so thin, they're at the breaking point. I'd be willing to bet that if that woman were driving down the road and a new driver pulled out in front of her and they were going a little bit slower than the speed limit said that they could go, she might lay on her horn and produce a preferred finger of choice. Not because she's a Karen, not because she's a bitch. She was actually a nice lady. She was just upset that I wasn't viewing certain things as important as she was. Everything was done the way it needed to be done. And so you're done. Get on with life, right? Dearly and I went out and had lunch at that really neat place that has a bathroom that's nicer than our house. And it was enjoyable. I loved it. I'm up here talking with deer. They went somewhere. But people are often saying, what is wrong with everybody? Why has this society gone so crazy? I really believe so many people are doing so much of which is not even necessary, that they're just at a breaking point. They're at a breaking point. And they are angry because, for instance, the young man behind us today in his little hybrid vehicle and his $5,000 dog, he's been told he doesn't matter. He's been brought up and told he does not matter. What? You feel like walking with your chest out and your head held high? Stop. That's an unfair physical advantage over half of the other people that exist in the world. Don't do that. Man, I tell you, you're going to call me a pig for saying this, but I'm going to say it. The woman with the forms and another woman that we dealt with yesterday, you've got so many women who are trying to be the absolute best mothers they can be. And I believe they're doing a good job at it. But they live in a society that tells them they're also supposed to get an education and be a professional. If they're not out there bringing home as much money or more than the men they're married to or their male counterparts, then they're not trying hard enough. And if they're focusing too much on domestic duties, they're submissive. They need to be over here being a strong, independent woman, bringing home the bacon and frying it up in a pan. But at the same time, if they're mothers, they need to be having this kid in soccer, this kid in flag football, and this kid in dance, and they better be getting them there on time, you know, when they're supposed to be there, and they better show up for every performance and every game, or they're an absentee parent. It's so hard to live in between worlds, and it's just not possible to do it once you've opened your eyes. So we're told, keep those eyes shut. Believe that the things you think are so are. Whatever you do, don't open your eyes. And if you do, you'll be labeled. You'll be labeled batshit crazy. They'll call you nuts. I know. Trust me. So what's the answer? Got to look at how we're living and sit back and take a deep breath and say, what can I get rid of? What can I get out so that I'm not spread so thin? I'm like this. I need to pull my shit together. That means cutting off some of this, some of that, some of the other. It's the only way I see it. And it took me leaving this culture, leaving this society, because that used to be me. I used to go to the coffee shops with friends, and I call it, we would celebrate ourselves. We'd drink that $5 cup of 50-cent coffee and talk about how important we were. And how if the rest of the world just did the things, you know, it's crazy. There's this one lunatic. You know what? I take that back. There's this other woman who's spread very thin, who every time she sees my wife runs up to her to tell her all the things that are wrong with her country because they just elected Marcos, son of a previous leader over there, and when they had Duterte. And oh my gosh, those people in the Philippines, do they not know what's good for them? And we asked her once, have you ever been to the Philippines? Oh God, no, I'd never go there. Look, well, you seem to know what's in their best interest. Have you thought about maybe going over and enlightening them? Whatever, man. Go to Amazon. Get the book that just came out that has your stories, not mine. True Hauntings, Volume 1. Real stories and personal experiences with the paranormal, supernatural, cryptids, UFOs, and aliens. I feel more comfortable in that world than I do in the one I live in. See you for more next time.